Hello everybody, thank you for joining us. Today we are going to do a quick crosshatch study, and this study will entail drawing almost primarily with crosshatch. So we are going to, let's say, draw any conventional. Let's try a fantasy sketch. So we have the head here, and let's do a sort of a hand up, chest. So the framework that I am trying to aim at is a person, a character, let's say, a character, and let's say the character is doing something random. So I'm just like thinking this up as we are going, just trying to put a sketch in place because our crosshatch can't work if we don't have a sketch. So there's our sketch. It's light because we want to explore how the crosshatch can make things work for us in fleshing out all the details here. So let's do a sort of a busy image. So there's another figure standing sort of back to back, and let's do another figure right there standing next to this guy here. So there's a central figure. So maybe like a rallying cry, or maybe like standing back to back against a set of opponents, or so we just made the sketch a little more complicated than initially intended, but it helps utilize certain different angles. Alright, and essentially I think we'll place the light source going upward. It will be, I think, a more beneficial practice to do so. So just put in that chiseled jaw, and there's the head to go with the framework. Let's say we're looking at a bunch of like savages. Let's give them an armband. Okay, now there's different ways to land our crosshatch, and we can do one of so many different things here. But we're going to use the most direct, the most conventional way of getting to it, and that is with casual crosshatch being put in. As soon as I can just should be more ready, this I just want to sharpen another pencil. So here we go. So the light source, let's say falling from above, and we're going to start with this guy who's in the foreground. So some places the crosshatch might actually end up being like a sort of fill, like right here. And then I, went that way. Crosshatch is, that, like, back, forth, and even in, like, other unconventional directions as we see fit. But essentially, crosshatch looks better when it is going along with the flow of the surface. For instance, the pectorals here are essentially either like that way or this way, but since the guy's like pulling upward, so it looks good if it's going this way. And of course, you can let us have your comments and give us your own ideas. That's the beautiful thing about art, that there is no conventional like mainstay idea. Yeah, there are certain rules, but not any conventional mainstay idea when it comes to these routine practice. I'm just making that a little more evident, the outline there. Okay, since we've already got the framework in place, and then we go and following that same flow of going upward here, put in some crosshatch, and it's always good to try this with a bare-chested person, because it gives, I believe, a slightly different angle to approach. And right there now, for instance, I'm concentrating the crosshatch almost to a fill. And then let's give him some abs, because abs can make good crosshatch practice. So abs are essentially like that, if they're well defined, let's say. So the important thing is maintaining a certain style about it. So style means that, for instance, right here, now I've decided that I'm doing the line flow style of crosshatch, and that means that I'm not necessarily smoothing everything out here. I'm leaving the lines as they are, so that they can be seen. Even if there is a fill, I'm making an effort to make sure that the lines are evident, especially at the end, not necessarily in the entire spot, but essentially where they're ending, because that makes for a I would say rather more artistic effect, artsy effect. So while you might focus on the depending on what kind of artwork you're trying to bring to the fore, you might end up making it a little more realistic taking a more realistic approach to finishing off a certain illustration, but that of course is only a part of the curve, and that will end up just with a slightly different result. But what we are aiming at is, as you see here, so this looks filled in sort of. Now I want to make this a little more evident here because it's like really sticking out, so I add in a little more right there. I add in a little more here, a little more right here, because there's more concentrated shadow usually if it is a just defined enough physique. So I'll let the other, and then I have some light cross hatch here, and again I'm making the lines evident as we're going along, and they've been flowing more or less along with the shape of the figure of the person here, of the character, so the person. And then I've chosen to, instead of like doing some, well, the outlines are already in, so we're choosing crosshatch again to flesh out the rest of the upper arm structure here. And we put in something right there, going into the forearm. Going into the forearm, and that ended up as a fill, I guess. So trying to go like frame by frame here, like piece by piece, and put together just enough so that there is a complete impression of a crosshatch being made to work for us. And there we have the forearm, and I'm going to do an additional set of lines here. So I know it comes across as a fill, but I am trying to maintain the same back and forth and up and down flow here to get that crosshatch going. And then same practice here, depending on how much light and dark I'm looking to establish with the concentrated tones, because this figure. Okay, so we are back here, and now as you see that we have concentrated the tones here again. So if you just keep going, crosshatches, that is why crosshatch is such a popular method when it comes to conventional illustration, and it has been like used by like artists, like I think from right from the beginning. Forgot a little bit there. So now we're going into the face. Again, trying to follow along the flow of the, for instance, the chin is round, flatter here, round, and that can just be a line, and then again crosshatch coming all the way down here, crosshatch coming all the way down here. So if you see here, we have conventionally added a crosshatch comprised of the same flow of lines, and except that only the only difference is that some places the line work is like longer. For instance, like here on the pecs, because they are a more expanded, like stretched out object. So, and here also, here they're like smaller because abs are smaller compared to that. Here also along the biceps, along the delts, slightly larger than the biceps. So that is the key to bringing out the difference in the different lines. The lines here again in the fingers, we're putting in some flat crosshatch right there, just making that more. And then we can keep on adding as we want to make certain elements darker. There's the nail, and I am feeling that I should maybe put another layer right here, go back and forth, a little back and forth there, and then another layer here, while maintaining the same flow if you want to adhere to the crosshatch practice. Of course, I could just go and like fill this in like that. That's also kind of counting as crosshatch, but that is going to have a more, if you see here, that's more, if you see more closely, that has a effect already that stands out from the other crosshatch layout. So it's better to maintain that flow and fill it up like that way, so that we don't have to like fix things later. For instance, right here, maintaining the flat and making it darker right there. So that is pretty much one character here done. Now we're just going to flesh out the other characters accordingly, and hopefully we'll touch base again once the speed video is over, in which we will try to crosshatch the other two characters as clearly and in detail as we can. So when I mention detail, it absolutely doesn't mean that we are doing this as a final work of art, because after all, we are doing a quick sketch essentially. If we take our sweet time about this, you could take like expend a lot of time, invest a lot of time in making the illustration go to the next level, and that means that it can be highly detailed, it can be highly realistic, as much as we want, just by using the same crosshatch techniques. What it does need is a lot of patience. So we're going to flesh out the other two characters with some crosshatch as well, and wind this up. So right here, well, we are now finishing off with our crosshatch. So as you see that we have tried to highlight each character like separately, and rather, I mean, this is like, well, they're savages, but made it more into a like fantasy barbarian, Conan the Barbarian type of backdrop. And I think that if you for a conventional crosshatch practice, and we have used the same material, color pencil, for this one. Personally, I think that it's much harder to do a crosshatch if it is done in color pencil, because the flow is not as, how we would call it, it is not as smooth. It doesn't flow the same way, like it's more restrictive. So our recommended practice is, if you could go with a color pencil first, what it will do is it's going to give some essential practice to your hand to work with a more stringent type of tool. And once you've done that, you will find the going much more easier and much more smoother with a pencil, with a lead pencil, or even with a gel pen, or one of those pigment pens, or any other conventional sketch pen. The going is always easier, but the idea is the same. If you, just like we used color pencil here, the advantage of color pencil is that it helps the fill areas a little more than does the pen or a lead. The lead pencil might work that way, but the pen, definitely there will be some harder work put in to make the crosshatch flow. So there we have it, one quick conventional practice in doing some crosshatch, and we'll just end this up with some extra color and some lines just to make the illustration work. So thank you for watching. We have other videos that focus on crosshatch, and we generally put out content every day. So please subscribe, keep in touch. Thank you for watching, and have yourself a wonderful day.